Since as far back as I remember, Warframe and Destiny have always been compared to one another, which is a real interesting concept because when you really look at it, the two games are widely different, but for some reason the communities have always compared them. Way back before I even ever thought about playing Warframe, I would always hear that Warframe was Destiny's closest rival. Now, something that you guys probably don't know about me is I actually played quite a bit of Destiny. Not as much as a lot of these experts. I think between Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, I probably got combined close to 3, maybe 400 hours if I'm being generous. But I did play a lot of Destiny. I played Destiny 1 closed alpha, which is probably the soonest that a normal player could probably play the game unless you were related to somebody in the studio. I've been following Destiny's journey all the way up until the final updates announcement that just came out recently. I've been a fan of Bungie for as long as I've been gaming. Halo is a game that I grew up on. I even got into the original Marathon games a little bit when they were released on the Xbox Arcade. So naturally, I was going to follow Destiny during its early development and all the way through up until now. Even though I wasn't so much of an avid player or a hardcore veteran, but I was still a fan of the game, more of a casual sense. I did play a lot of Destiny. And I would always hear about this rivalry between Warframe and Destiny. And during these times when I would play Destiny and you would get into groups with people, occasionally you would hear about Warframe. And my first impressions of Warframe at the time, purely from a visual standpoint, and it's just purely judgmental, is I thought Warframe appeared to be a cheap third-person mobile game like looter shooter. Didn't really have that appeal to me just by looking at it visually, and I just had this impression that it was very cheaply made. And with the free-to-play model, I always had this impression that there was going to be a predatory premium currency of some sort, which we all know that's not the case. And actually, Digital Extremes over here at Warframe probably has the most ethical premium currency system and the most forgiving premium currency model that I've ever seen in modern gaming right now. I could make a whole video just talking about the premium currency system in Warframe and how ethical it really is, but we're not going to do that today. Since becoming a Warframe player and understanding the various systems that the game has to offer, the gameplay loop, and all the things that come with it, I've had it in the back of my head realizing that this is not at all like Destiny. Like, these games don't really share all that much similarities. In fact, I think the only similarities off the top of my head are the fact that you shoot and you loot. The star chart and the director look pretty similar, although a lot more going on in Warframe than there is in Destiny. They both have really weird fucking looking moons. You have an AI that talks to you, which is pretty standard in sci-fi games anyway, so it's not really an exclusive back and forth thing. And you're flying a ship that kind of acts as like a loading screen in between missions. That's about it. Everything else about those two games are pretty different, but for some reason, a lot of people like to make the comparison between the two. And then with the comparison, you always hear the talk about the toxic community, that is the Destiny community, or the knee-jerk reaction from the Warframe community that you see, because the Warframe community immediately starts talking about how toxic the Destiny community is, in which the Destiny community finds that toxic in itself, and there's just this constant back and forth between the vocal minority groups that are holding these games very near and dear to their heart. Now, the other day when I was streaming, I told my chat and my community about my plan to experience Destiny 2 one final time since they did the announcement for their final update coming out here pretty soon. I've never done a raid in Destiny, neither Destiny 1 or Destiny 2. I've done a lot of endgame content, but I've never done the highest endgame content, which is raiding. I'm somebody that's played a lot of World of Warcraft. I've done a lot of raiding in World of Warcraft, so I know how the raiding culture is over there, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I've always wanted to do a raid in Destiny. And I figured there's a lot of people within my community, or the Warframe community in general, that have never experienced a raid before, but didn't want to deal with that toxicity. And I'm using air quotes there intentionally, and we're going to get into that as well. But they didn't want to deal with that toxicity that you would get when you join a raid team or a clan or a guild, whatever you want to call it, and do the raids. So I thought, well, this could be a fun experience to get me a couple of my veteran friends and start bringing in some of the community that's never done a raid before and want to have a chance to partake in doing raids during Destiny's one final peak time, at least that's what the assumption is, before the game starts to wither away. And I expressed that to the community, to which, of course, it ignited a little bit of a debate. And the one thing that you always see from at least the Warframe side that I see is that the Destiny community is toxic and they do not want the toxic player base coming over from Destiny to Warframe. To which I responded with, I don't think toxic Destiny players, and again, I'm using air quotes there very intentionally, I don't think toxic Destiny players are going to come over to Warframe because I don't think those Destiny players like Warframe. Again, they're two very different games. And the player bases for both games are looking for two totally different experiences. This is the equivalent to me of comparing Diablo 4 to World of Warcraft. It's the same type of mentality. They're similar games in the sense that there's dungeons, you can loot, you're doing a gear progression. I mean, I know that Destiny and Warframe, Warframe doesn't have gear progression, but, just follow along with the example here. Don't take it too literally. It's like an MMO and an ARPG. There's similarities, but they're played very differently. Destiny is played a lot more like an MMO light, like a first-person MMO, whereas opposed to Warframe, it's played a lot more like an ARPG, like a Path of Exile or a Diablo. You can play that game damn near the whole thing solo if you so much choose to, whereas opposed to Destiny, you can't play the game solo entirely if you want to do every bit of content in the game. You need to group. You need to join a clan or a guild. You need to get in voice comms. You need to do group activity. And I know members of the Warframe community would argue with me and say that there are similarities there where you do need to group and do some things in Warframe, but I disagree. Everything that I've seen in Warframe, you could do solo if you so choose to. Doing it as a group will make content easier for you. Doing it solo will add a little bit more of a challenge, or a lot more of a challenge, depending on who you ask. But you can play damn near the whole game, Warframe, from front to back by yourself. You don't really need to have groups there. And I think this is why there's this distinction between the two communities, and why the two communities have different vibes and different energies, or they're considered toxic. One's considered toxic, one's not. One's considered more friendly, one's not. And I'm going to talk to you guys about why I think that is. And this is purely an opinion piece. But based on my experience of raiding in World of Warcraft and the similarities with that in Destiny, we're going to talk about it right now. You see, Destiny players have a very specific itch that they're looking to scratch when it comes to their game. For the most part, Warframe doesn't have that itch. Unless you're somebody who's a little bit more neutral or level-headed and you're looking for similarities, but not the full-blown raiding experience or the full-blown group content experience, and you're looking to do something a little bit more solo with some similarities, and yeah, you might like Warframe, but you have to shift your mindset. You can't go into Warframe thinking you're going to get an absolute replacement for Destiny, because that's not what it's going to be. I would implore you to go seek out a more traditional MMO like World of Warcraft. I know everyone's got their opinions on World of Warcraft, but there's a reason why it's the king of MMOs, and it's going to go on for plenty of time. So now, the one thing I said earlier was about the group content versus the solo content that would split between the two games. And this is a critical reason as to why the Destiny player base seems a little bit more toxic, and I'll give you some insight on my experience. And again, I know I never raided in Destiny, but hear me out, because you will start seeing, if you raided in Destiny and you compare it to my raid experiences in World of Warcraft, you'd probably feel like we're on the same page here. When I used to raid in World of Warcraft, it was a very exciting experience. You're starting to get in with a group that you start to meet new people, you're learning mechanics, you're watching videos. It's very exciting, it's very fresh. Whenever a new raid came out, there was this type of euphoric feeling there, this dopamine rush that you would get when everyone's just trying to get on the same page and figure it out. You're seeing the new room, you're learning the new mechanics, there might be a new puzzle that you need to solve, and you're trying to figure that out together as a whole, as a group. And that's one of the most fun things about, new expansion drops or new raids that come out in MMO spaces, or even in Destiny, I imagine. Now, the thing that would bring in some of the more toxicity of raiding would be, usually raid teams would set about 1 or 2 days a week, set aside maybe about 3 hours of time. It could be, work nights, it could be, weekends or something, where you're willing to sacrifice a chunk of time to raid or to, party up with a group of people, and everyone needs to be locked in. That's the assumption, at least, that everyone should be locked in and you're trying to progress the content, because progressing the content will get you the best gear that you possibly need for your character or your class or whatever, your best in slot, and you're trying to be the best that you want that you can be. That's the whole point. That's like how you beat the game, quote unquote. That's how you beat the expansions. That's how you beat the new content. You're trying to be the strongest version. It's a power thing. You're trying to be the most powerful fucking character that you can be. And the only way you can usually do that in these type of games is doing it through raids. We should all know that. The toxicity comes from after a couple weeks of doing this, and you are around, your individuals, your clan members, your friends even, where there's people that might still not know what to do. It's like the equivalent of doing a job, and you're training somebody new on the job, and after a month, they're still making the same mistakes that they've been making since they first started. And those mistakes make your job harder, or make your day harder, or however you want to put it in your head. That's kind of where the toxicity starts to come from, because when you start getting into these groups and you start running with people that might not know what they're doing, or they might not know how to do specific things, it becomes a, here, let me show you, or here, let's work on this, to, I've been doing this for months. I've been doing this several times a week for months. I've put away so many hours for this, and I feel like my time is being wasted. And then you start getting frustrated. Even the most level-minded people eventually will get frustrated having to keep rerunning the same things over and over. Somebody messing up something very basic that just nullifies all the time that you put into it, or having to reset or run. It's frustrating. And that does tend to bring out a lot of frustration or toxicity from the player bases that play these games. I'm not saying it's the right reaction, but I'm saying that's the natural reaction that you kind of will see when you're playing these type of games. I'm somebody who gets excited to do raids, and over time I would find myself being a little bit more toxic to people who might be new. It's even sucked so bad, at least in like World of Warcraft, where I switched off the class I was playing. I used to be a tank role, and tanks would lead raids or lead new dungeons, and I hated getting flamed for doing it, you know, for not doing my research or watching the YouTube videos on how to do the optimal runs and stuff like that. So I would play a little bit more of a casual class, like a DPS or even a healer, where all I gotta do is just kind of follow you around and just keep you alive, you know? I know it's not the same thing we're talking about Destiny, but I'm just saying this is where the mindset comes from. And then you also have the Crucible. Now the Crucible is pretty active as far as I'm aware. I mean, it was active when I was playing. It was always active, and people are pretty passionate about the Crucible. There's that natural competitive nature there when you have a PvP game mode that's pretty fun and challenging, and people want to be good at it, and they want to flex how good they are at the game, of course. Raiding on the surface is very fun, and if you get the right group of people and you go through and you're doing like more normal difficulty content and you're just trying to clear and have a good time, of course, that's its own thing in itself. But there's a lot of people that want to push that harder content, and they want to get the best of the best. They want to get the most out of their money. They want to get the most out of their time. And that's kind of where it starts bringing out the high stress, the high intensity, the toxicity. I know I keep saying toxicity, but that's kind of where the impression is of toxicity, because it's people that are putting a lot of time into this, and their progress could be getting wiped away because people are making mistakes. That breeds a specific type of player when you have those things combined in this one game. There's competitiveness there, even though the game on the surface doesn't really seem that much of a competitive game. There's competition there because you're trying to make your guy the strongest character you possibly can through various means of harder difficulty content that requires group play. You know, like I said, with Crucible, you need a good group for the most part. For raiding, you need a good group. So people are always at each other's throat. Maybe not always, but people are at each other or a little bit on top of each other to be the best they can be, because they rely on others to be good. Or they rely on other people to know what they're doing. They rely on other people to do their homework. They rely on other people to watch YouTube videos before they get into the game. They rely on others. That's the thing that sets apart the Destiny side of the gameplay loop with Warframe, because you have to rely on other people to play the game. If you want to play the maximum amount of the game and you want to squeeze every bit of content out of Destiny, you need to rely on others. Now, some people might have a really good group or really good friends or family members or whatever, and they don't really have these problems, and that's good, but I can tell you that's probably a little few and far between. I'm sure you'll see some stories in the comments of people saying they've never had those problems, but I'm telling you, it exists because I've experienced it. And I'm not saying that my experiences means that everyone's had those experiences, but it's just things that I've encountered, and I've seen it all over when I would play these types of games. Now let's turn back to Warframe. Why Warframe isn't as toxic or as high stress as something like Destiny is what I said earlier. You do not need to rely on other people to play the game. You can play the game entirely solo if you so much as choose, which is even something that I've been doing for the most part. If you're following my journey, granted, if I'm doing grinds or I'm trying to, grind like a specific resource or do repetitive missions or whatever, yeah, I'll get some groups in. But for the most part, I want to play the game or experience it solo. There is hard content that would benefit you having a group with, but I had asked my chat the other day, I straight up said, how much of this game can you play solo? How much of this game can you progress all the way through from start to finish solo? And everyone said about 99% of the game you can get through solo. There's parts that will filter you, and there's parts that you might need help, and you would probably benefit from help, and I know we can argue about that too, but the gist is, you don't need to rely on other people to really play the game. And I think that's what makes the Warframe community a little bit more relaxed, or a little bit more casual, or a little bit more chill, or more helpful, because everyone's still figuring it out in their own lane. And that's the other thing I always talk about. The game is, there's not really a meta without raids and without best in slot, shoulders and the different types of progressions that modern MMOs have, there's not a meta or like a one-track mind to get from point A to point B. There's various different ways that you can play the game to get to wherever you want to go. And I think that even also why a lot of Destiny players get a little turned off from Warframe is because the concept of no real linear progression through endgame is scary. It doesn't really make sense. I spent months trying to figure out what the fuck the end game is for Warframe when I started playing, because I didn't want to sink my time into a game if there was really nothing to do eventually. It's amazing now that I understand how the game is played, and there really isn't a strong, concrete end game, but how much fun it is knowing that there's not. It's a concept that I never thought I was going to be on board with. I'm somebody that wanted a concrete end game. I'm somebody that wanted my hand held and wanted it to tell me this is where you're supposed to go and this is what you're supposed to do and this is the gear you're supposed to get or whatever it's supposed to be. And, it's scary. It's kind of scary when you come into a game like this and, it's just floodgates are open. Do whatever you want, right? It's a weird thing, I'll tell you that. But the Warframe community doesn't have to rely on others. That's the biggest thing. Again, you can use examples on where relying on others is beneficial, but I'm talking about if the servers went down, okay, and you can play Warframe single player, let's just pretend. How much of the game could you get through if there was no online functionality? If you could play Warframe single player for a couple weeks, let's just pretend that the servers go down, but you're allowed to play single player. You could still play the game, right? Tell me if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, tell me if I'm wrong, but let's just use our imaginations here. You could play the game solo. You can progress through the game solo for the most part. And let's be real, when you do group up to do harder content, people just kind of rinse it anyway. If anything, it's actually kind of like a cheat code if you're playing with people, which is why sometimes with the harder content, where people ask me if I'm doing like hard bosses or something like that for the first time or whatnot, they'll ask to group up with me and I say, no, let me experience it solo, because as soon as you get someone in, it dilutes the experience. It really does. Not that it's a bad thing, but I'm not really understanding the weight of what my Warframe is doing. I'm not really understanding how hard this boss is hitting. I'm not really understanding what's going on, because people will run in, press 2 buttons, shoot their gun, a lot of flashes going off, big numbers, and now we're exiting, and that's it. And I don't even know what the fuck happened. And that's really what sets these two games out apart from each other, besides their obvious differences, with the gameplay loop. And to be honest with you, I know a lot of Destiny players are going to be on the prowl looking for the new game to satisfy the itch. But I really hope that more of them kind of come to the light side of this type of mentality with gaming. Because I too used to be like them. I used to be like somebody that wanted endgame group content. The idea of Warframe not having raids scared me. The idea of not having like a Mythic Plus like system scared me. There was a lot of things that I felt like Warframe didn't have, and I was scratching my head going, well, how is this game so strong? How is the community so strong? How are they so monkey strong? I don't get it. How is this game alive for as long as it is? And there's no big bad that I'm trying to work up to be really strong and go and fight him and kill him with the group. And then in like 3 months, all my progress is nullified because the new big bad comes out and I got to do it all over again. Like, how the fuck am I going to play a game that doesn't have any of that? And I'm telling you, once I've opened my mind and once I've gotten like cozied on in, I nuzzled up to the tit of Digital Extreme and I was getting into this game, I feel great. The pacing of the game, I play it at my own pace. There's no stress for the most part. I'm not stressing out to play this game. There's no FOMO. I'm not spending hundreds of dollars, to play the game. I'm not spending hundreds of dollars just to play the parts of the game that I find interesting or that I want to play. Something new comes out, I can go grind for it. I can go farm the premium currency myself. Or hell, the premium currency is really good value. A lot of the times they give you the coupons, and because it's a free game, I don't feel like I'm totally being robbed if I go and spend $25 to buy some premium currency to buy the cool thing I want to get. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Like, aren't you tired of spending $200 every 6 months or every year just to play your game? Like, doesn't that feel like a scam? We're all getting older. Us gamers, we're getting older. Like, money's a lot harder to come by nowadays. The economy's not in the greatest state. Like, don't you get sick of feeling like you have to spend a lot of money just to enjoy your game? Like, even when I booted up Destiny the other day for the first time since 2024, I had to spend like $50 fucking just to play the game again, just to experience the game that I left off. And the last time I played them, I had to fucking give them $50 for the Lightfall DLC or whatever. I might be exaggerating the number count, but I have to pay them to play the game. But I'm hoping for the Destiny players that are coming over to Warframe and they're going to give it a try and they're going to try to find, something that's going to scratch that itch. I hope they can restructure their way of enjoying games and maybe see what Warframe has to offer before immediately going to straight, comparisons. And you're going to naturally compare, and that's fine. But I really implore and I hope that they are able to just really give it a fair chance and a fair try. As someone, as we all, if any reoccurring viewers or any fans, I guess I can call you that, of the channel, what we've been doing here, you've seen my experience, you've seen my journey. I was very reluctant to give this game a fair go. I tried giving this game a fair go a few times. It really wasn't clicking for me. But once I finally got settled in and I finally started to figure out the systems and I figured out how things, I still don't really know what I'm doing. I'm having a hell of a time. I love logging into this game every day. Even off stream, I'll log into this game and get some stuff done. I look forward to the weekly resets. I look forward to seeing what incarnates are in the circuit that I want to go and run a couple. Maybe I knock out a couple ranks before I go and get dinner, or go do the Descendia. I think the Descendia is really fun. It's just something quick you can go and do every week. It's cool. You get some cool stuff there. Doing your 1999 calendar. I'm just talking basic weeklies, but it's fun. It's exciting. I don't know why. It's this game, once you change that way of thinking that these other games like a Destiny or like a World of Warcraft and how these other MMOs are so predatory and they're preying on you to have that FOMO, or they're preying on you to it's like a drug, to just constantly want to go, and I don't know. It feels so much better being a part of a game and a community that you don't feel like you're being preyed on as you've been preyed on through other games like Destiny or World of Warcraft. So I know I kind of went off on a tangent there at the end, so I just kind of want to wrap this one all up real quick. I don't think Destiny players are inherently toxic, and I don't think the Warframe community should be worried about toxic Destiny players coming over to Warframe. You're going to see it, and I know people will tell me that they've seen stuff in a region chat, whatever, and that's fine. You're going to have it. But the game will filter out anyone who doesn't enjoy the game, because people aren't going to stick around and play a game that's not going to offer to them what they're looking for. And I don't blame the Destiny players for being a little more aggro about certain elements or certain things that they enjoy in the game, because that's kind of how they were groomed to feel. That's how I was when I was playing Destiny or World of Warcraft and things like that. That's kind of the nature of the game that you were playing. It's like League of Legends. Think about League of Legends players. They're all miserable, and it's common knowledge. Everyone knows League of Legends players are miserable. They hate their game, and they will never recommend you play their game, but they're addicted to it, and you can't even blame them. It's just, it's like a drug. The game is designed to keep you hooked like that, So I don't even blame the Destiny players for being a little more hostile or aggro, and I'm using these kind of loosely. These are just terms that people have said. But I don't even really blame them, because their game was designed to be a time sink like that, and having to rely on other people to push content. Dude, I get it. I've been there at 1 a.m., on a work night. I got to get up in 4 hours, and some guy, I got Jafar over here. We've done this raid 18 times in the last 4 weeks, and he's still fucking up on the same mechanic that we repeatedly keep telling him, dude, do not stand on the red circle. The red circle is going to kill you and wipe the whole group. And I'm falling asleep at the keyboard. I'm like, dude, I could be asleep and getting ready for fucking work in the morning. Now I'm all pissed off the next day walking around because Jafar couldn't fucking figure out how to stand off to the side and get out of the red puddle. You see, now I'm getting fucking worked up, and this is a made-up situation. Now this is the part where I farm engagement in the comments below. You ready for this? So what do you guys think about everything I've said? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. Maybe the Warframe community is not as wholesome and chill as I'm led to believe. Maybe the Destiny community is actually the better of the two. Maybe there's no difference. Maybe we shouldn't be arguing about the different communities. We should just all understand that people are looking for specific games and to satisfy those specific itches, and we don't need to force these games onto one another. Maybe that's what we should talk about. Just because Destiny was compared to Warframe and they're not even really that similar of a game, maybe the Destiny players don't need to try Warframe. It's fine. It's totally cool, and Warframe players should be cool with that. And Warframe players shouldn't be having a knee-jerk reaction because Destiny players don't like their game. Dude, Warframe, let's be honest. On the surface, that game's really fucking hard to get into. It's really hard to get into. It takes a long time. Go talk to your average Warframe player. There's always a story about how Warframe players had to fucking, jump through 7 different levels of hell and had to fucking, you know, have a gun put to their heads sometimes just to get through the first 5 hours of the games and go, oh, you know what, this is actually pretty good. Like, it happens. It's just, we got to be honest with ourselves. You know, we're never going to progress as a society if we don't start being honest with ourselves. There we go. That's my message for the day, right? Just be honest with yourself. I'm telling you, it takes a lot of stress off you when you're honest with yourself and you're able to acknowledge that, you know, maybe you're wrong, or maybe, you know, things aren't the way that they appear or whatever. I don't know. That's my message. This wasn't what this was about. We kind of went all over the place, but fuck it. Here we are. And hopefully you're still here too. Like, comment, and subscribe if you've enjoyed what you've seen today, and give me your opinions in the comments below, of course. Thank you guys for hanging out. I'll see you in the next one.